Hey everybody, the wind's blowing, so I hope that you can hear me okay. Before we get started showing you how to start gardening, I want to show you what I have going on, and that way you'll be able to see my successes and my failures as we move through the spring and into the summer. I'm going to be very transparent. I am not claiming to be an expert. If you already know how to garden, this might not necessarily be the video for you, unless you're looking, I might know a couple things that you don't, but this is really for people who have never gardened before, or maybe have gardened before without a lot of success. So I'm going to show you what I have going on here, and let's take a look. Okay, so one of the things that I definitely want to show everyone is that there are a lot of different ways to be successful at gardening. A couple of years ago, I did nothing but container gardens. I did them all in these 5-gallon buckets, which you can find at your local hardware store, your big box stores. I'm sure that you can probably tell where I bought them from, but I'm not receiving any sort of payment or anything, so I'm not going to mention the name, although I'm sure that you can see it. So what I have in both of these buckets are green peas. Honestly, I have 3 varieties of peas planted right now, and I'm not really sure which varieties in these buckets, I'll be honest. I'm pretty sure they're white dwarf peas. I did start these from seed, and they are actually doing really well out here, which I'm glad to see. I had them sitting in the yard, and my neighbor suggested that I put them up on a pallet kind of in the middle of the yard, so they're getting the same amount of sun as everything else. I do have a mixture of store-bought and things that I started from seed. So everything else that's on this pallet was store-bought. I've got a thyme plant, which I have repotted. It's doing okay. I would like for it to be doing a little better. We'll water it before we go in. Hopefully it'll perk up. I think it's just having a little transplant shock, because it just got into this big pot. This used to be a cilantro, which I have managed to kill. I'm not sure how. I bought that cilantro. As it happens, I do have cilantro seeds, which are also known as coriander, in the house. So I'm going to plant more seeds in this pot, and hopefully they will take. This is a peppermint, which I have repotted, and it is already starting to kind of spread out in here. It's doing really well. And next to it, I've got a sweet mint, which I also repotted yesterday. I've got three lavender plants. They will eventually find a place somewhere in the yard, but we're not sure where yet. So that's why they are still in pots. And in the back, it's kind of hard to differentiate, but that is actually a rosemary. I have pruned all 3 of these lavenders plus the rosemary. I've also pruned the thyme, and I'll show you in a bit. I actually have the prunings in the house in shot glasses to see if they will root in some water. And then I've got marigolds. We've got bunnies that like to frolic back here in the yard, and I want them to stay out of my garden. So all of these marigolds will eventually find a place in one of the holes in the cinder blocks. Okay, so this is our cinder block raised bed. Obviously we built this, and I can go through step by step, if you would like me to, how you can do this in your own yard. It does not have to be this size. This is about 4.5 feet by 8.5 feet, which is 4 by 8 is kind of standard for a lot of raised beds, but you can absolutely do this bigger or smaller. If you decide to do it bigger, I would suggest that you build it in such a way that you can easily access the middle without crushing things, because once I've got everything in here and everything is grows up, it's going to be hard to kind of reach around. But there's cardboard under it. We didn't dig to put this in. And excuse me, when I say we, I'm talking about my boyfriend, Jamar, who lives here with me. Our soil is terrible. It's clay. It's very, very heavy, and I can show that to you. So instead of trying to dig this out, we just laid cardboard down, which will choke out the grass. Put the cinder blocks on top and then filled it in with dirt. And there is cardboard under this dirt as well. So this bed isn't as full of dirt as it eventually will be. Right now, all I have in it are more peas. What's in the bucket is what I couldn't fit in this space. And peas have pretty shallow root systems, so this is enough dirt for them, hopefully. And then I had 2 tomatoes that I started from seed that I put out, I think 2 days ago, and as you can see, they are no longer there. That was my fault. I have one more of that variety of tomato in the house in a pot. It's going to stay in the house in a pot for now. As you can see, I've started my marigolds, and we have a long way to go with those. And then in my other raised bed, which I'll show you in a second, the previous owner had a garden there. So I'm dealing with random little seedlings that are popping up in my other raised bed. This I am almost certain is a pepper, and I'm basing that purely off of the knowledge that I have of growing peppers over the last couple years. And I am about 99% sure that this is a tomato. I went ahead and moved them out of the other bed and into this one, because this is where I plan to put my tomatoes and my peppers. So here's the other raised bed. This one is wooden, 4x8, was already here when we moved in. With this bed, it's going to stay like this year, but we actually may make it a little bit taller, and it's basically just a matter of adding wood to the sides to make it taller. But in this bed, this is garlic, and I've got quite a bit of it in here. It grows really well with broccoli and a lot of greens. And actually this whole bed is nothing right now except for broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts. As you can see, they look very, very similar. I put them in that order. So broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprout, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprout. Now a couple of days ago, I put in 3 rows of carrots, which have not come up yet. And I also put in 2 rows of beets that haven't come up yet. And then down here I have 6 onions. You can see one of them. The rest of them, oh, there's a couple peeking out. So I'm hoping the onions will do well. I'm really not sure. And then as you can see, I've got tons of little seedlings coming up in here. I think those are more peppers. This is another tomato. I'm gonna move it because it can't be there in between the garlic and the Brussels sprouts. Something will end up killing something else. Here's another pepper. Pretty sure we got some more peppers or tomatoes down in here. So this bed's going to be interesting because these are all plants that maybe a tomato fell in the dirt last season and decomposed. So now the seeds are mixed in with the soil. You can't see them. They're way too small. So I'll just have to deal with them as they come up and decide what I want to do with them. And this is our last garden for right now. This space was already here when we bought the house. The lady who owned this house previously was a botanist or a horticulturist. excuse me, horticulturalist. So she was good at growing things. I'm pretty sure she put this bed in, although I can't be certain. As you can see, this is not technically a raised bed. This is a more traditional dug into the ground garden. I did put some soil amendment in this because, again, we have that really gross clay soil. I'll show you. It's supposed to rain the next 2 days, so I'll show you what that clay soil looks like here in Cincinnati where I am. But in this bed we have kidney beans, which are what these are. And I did start these from the regular dried kidney beans that you buy at the store. Yes, you can grow with those. I've got some rainbow chard. I've got it in a few places. It's doing well in some places and not as well in other places. This may perk back up. I hope so. Swiss chard is pretty hardy, so I'm thinking it'll probably perk up in here. But this is all rainbow chard. And then I have some kale. There's a tiny one back there. There's 2 up here. One right there, one right there. Those are both kale. Forgive me, my nails are dirty. I've been digging in the dirt. There were 4 of them. Now there are 3. That will happen. It's normal. It's okay. I can always start more. There's a little red cabbage there. There's another red cabbage. There were 3 of them. I only see 2. And then so I have to zoom in for this one. That is a green cabbage. And there's a green cabbage back there. I just kind of have to watch these. That's really all I can do. They're so small. And unfortunately, it means I really can't weed in this bed too much until everything gets older, so that I can tell that I'm pulling a weed and not pulling out one of my plants. And last but not least, this is what I have going on in my kitchen right now. This is a lettuce that I bought at the store, and after we used up all the good parts, I threw what was left of it into some water. It didn't sprout the way I expected it to. A lot of lettuce will sprout from the inside of the head. This is actually sprouting a bunch of little lettuces all around it. So I'm just going to keep it in here for now and let it do its thing. This is another lettuce. It's a different variety. I think this is a butter crunch. And it is growing from the inside. Both of these I literally have sitting in the bottoms of plastic bottles. Like, this is how you do this cheap and easy. I have pots, but because they work so well with just water and no dirt, this works fine. I told you I had clipped my rosemary. There it is. I do think it is starting to root ever so slightly. I think you might be able to see a couple roots in there. So this will stay in water until it roots. Once it has a pretty good root system, it'll go in dirt, and I'll have new rosemary that I didn't have to pay for. Always a great thing. This is my basil. Again, store-bought. It needs to probably go outside pretty soon. I've got 2 sweet potatoes sitting here. There's nothing wrong with them. They are perfectly edible. However, I would like to see if I can get a couple of my sweet potatoes to sprout. So I took out a couple just to see what happens. And I've got some turmeric, and I have a piece of ginger too. The ginger I think is pretty close to sprouting. One of these little edges had some green. Oh, now I can't find it. Somewhere on here. Oh, this one. I think this might actually sprout at some point. So I'm trying to give it an opportunity to do that. And then here's the lavender, oregano, thyme, another lavender, and the top of a pineapple. I like to just stick things in water and see what happens. That sounds hilarious, but you get surprising results, and it's a really good way to try to regrow stuff you've already paid for at the store without having to shell out for pots and seeds and fertilizer and dirt and all of those things. So that's what's going on. You've seen pretty much everything. Oh, I did get strawberries in the mail, so we'll check them out another day. But I wanted you to at least see kind of what I'm starting with. And then as I start more seeds throughout the next couple of weeks, you'll be able to see that process firsthand.